I want to tell you about my names or name. JI-TENGE. JI-TENGE is not a name. It's a statement. That is why when you see my Skiza tunes, I've recorded there as Tenge. And if you see my YouTube is JI-TENGE. So Tenge is a statement. There are those people who are born alone. By this I mean, those days, there are some women who only gave birth to one child. And if that child happened to be male, he would be given whatever name he would be given. For example, you are newly married. When you are newly married, you have a kid. Then later, you don't get kids. You see, when you have your first kid, you name that kid whatever name you name that kid. Wekesa, Wafula, Wehwera, whatever. But as time goes on, the woman in the marriage does not conceive. So if this person is alone, although he was given another name, but later in life it is this way. When you talk to people, you see people have characteristics. They have characteristics that are of a different whatever. So you tell somebody, huyo ni Tenge. You see somebody who was born without siblings, anakuaga mtu wa kupembelezwa. Anakuaga mtu wa kupembelezwa. So whenever you talk to people and you find somebody behaving in a certain way, you could whisper to somebody, he's a Tenge. So Tenge was not a name. Tenge is a statement. Today, we have couples who, after getting their first kid, they decide that they are not going to have other kids. According to Bukusu tradition, that kid is also a Tenge. So JI-TENGE means son of Tenge. Son of Tenge, JI-TENGE. So when you find somebody called JI-TENGE and you just call him Tenge, he will accept, he will acknowledge. Some people, especially non-Luhyas, there are occasions they call me Kwa-TENGE, Kwa-TENGE. Being a non-Luhya, I would accept that. But in Luhya, Kwa-TENGE means the widow of Tenge. So there is Tenge who has died. His sons will be called JI-TENGE, and his widow will be called Kwa-TENGE. So if you are non-Luhya, you call me Kwa-TENGE, I'll understand. Now, my grandfather was JI-TENGE, his name, but he was not JI-TENGE. He was not born alone. He had a brother called Muchuma. He had stepbrothers called Ford, and so on. My grandfather's real name was Musavinyi. So if you change one of the I's and place an E, it means that my grandfather was a namesake to a neighboring president. If you replace one I with an E. But the only thing I can conclude is that the person who was Musavini, whom my grandfather was named after, must have been a JI-TENGE. So my grandfather adopted the name JI-TENGE more than his original name, Musavini. I was named after my father, after my grandfather. So I'm also JI-TENGE, but all the JI-TENGE family, because everybody who has roots with my grandfather have adopted the name JI-TENGE. You have to be a member of a family to know that my grandfather was called Musavini. Then comes to my father. My father was named Lando, and one of my sons is also called Lando. My father was Japheth Lando, and my son is Japheth Lando. Japheth Lando JI-TENGE. So my father was given a Luo name. We have no Luo blood in us. We are not related in any Luo, apart from one of my brothers has married a Luo lady. But we have no blood relationship with Luos. How comes that my father was given a Luo name? There are two reasons. Reason number one, my grandmother used to give birth to, she gave birth to so many kids, and many of them died out of child mortality. Child mortality. But those days, there were only two reasons for child mortality. Either somebody had done some juju to the family, or the relative. You see, when you get the first child, you name so and so. The person dies, the child dies. Lawyers used to determine that the ancestor, just like Congolese say, Bankoko Baboi, that is the ancestors have refused. So when you name the child Wafula after a dead relative, and then the child dies immediately, one of the translations of Luya, they used to interpret it as Wafula has refused to incarnate himself. You get another child, you call it Wekesa, the child dies immediately, you take it that the child has, Wekesa has refused to incarnate. So on and so on. And then a VIP visited our home. On the week, he came a few days before my father was born, and he left a few days after my father had been born. So they decided, because this is a Luhya tradition, I know other traditions also have that if a VIP visits around your place and a child is born, let's take the VIP is a woman, and you get a boy, you'll go and find out her husband's name. So you'll name the boy after her husband. But if it is a girl and the VIP was a woman, you'll name the girl after the VIP. On the reverse, if the VIP is a man and a child is born and the child is a boy, the child is given that VIP's name. But if a child is born a girl and the VIP is male, you ask the VIP the name of his wife. And if he gives you the name of the wife, you name the child after the wife. But since the VIP was male and his name was Lando, then my father was given the name to remember, Lando. Who was Lando? Let me tell you. In 1930s, what we call Nyanza province or Nyanza region and Western province or Western region used to be one district. The district started all the way from Mount Elgon to Kericho. Yes, Kericho, the Kipsigis were in Nyanza district. And the place was called Nyanza because the Europeans had asked Luhyas the name of a lake. And they were told the lake is called Einyanza. So they called it Einyanza. And when Western was cut, the whole lake ended up in Luo land. And so Western could not be called Einyanza because it had no lake. That is why the area is called Nyanza. It's a Luhya word for lake. In Luo, lake is Lolwe. Lolwe. Yeah, the name is Lolwe. So, there used to be a tax collector who was a clerk. Those days in 1930, for an African to be a clerk, he had to be a very senior person. Those of you who are my age, you remember the song, Makarani wako wengi sana Nairobi, wanayo raha, wanapata 1,150. Clerks used to earn in the 50s a salary of 1,500, and they were very senior people. And in 1950s, they used to have a scooter. So, you find that this clerk, Mr. Lando, used to collect taxes all the way from Mount Elgon all the way up to Kericho. He would go around. And how was the taxes being collected? The taxes used to be called hut tax. Hut tax. Hut is a building, H-U-T. So if you have 7 wives, you have 7 huts. Each hut would pay its own taxes. But if you have 1 wife, you'll just pay 1 hut. So it used to be called hut tax. And my grandfather JI-TENGE was a village elder. Those days they used to be called, nowadays wanaita sijui nyumba kumi, wanaita makuru, village elder. But those days they used to be called headman. My grandfather was H1. We used to have H1, H2, H3. So, when I was in Kiganja as a recruit, instructors used to tell us, utadu, nikikuja kwenyu sitalala kwenyu, nitalala kwa chief. Those days there used to be no hotels. So, government officials used to go and sleep at the chief's place or the headman's place. So when Mr. Lando came to our area to collect taxes, he was accommodated by JI-TENGE, who was H1. So when he was accommodated, that is the time when my father was born. And he was given that name. Well, I'll not tell you the meaning of James, because in Kenya, we have Christian names. But my name, my baptismal name was Raphael. Raphael. But one time, when I was young, I got my birth certificate in 1967 when I was 6 years old. But when I was 5 years old and back then up to baby, people used to visit us, and they knew my father was JI-TENGE. But then when they're in the home, they ask my siblings, everybody says his name. It reached me, and they would ask me, who are you? Said, I'm JI-TENGE. And they were confused. How can, you see, my father was using the name JI-TENGE because that was his father's name. You are called Mr. So-and-so because of the name of your father. So my father, Lando, was using the name JI-TENGE because that was his father's name. But when people visit us, they find one of the children was also calling himself JI-TENGE. They got confused. So my father forgot to tell them, when my mother took me to Tarbo for baby, what do you call it? Baby baptism, I was given the name Raphael. But my father could not remember the name Raphael. He just told them I'm James. And James stuck up to today. So I am Raphael, the Catholic name. But in my document, I am James Lando JI-TENGE. I did not use the JI-TENGE twice because, first of all, initially, when I started schooling, we used to use only 2 names. So in school, in primary, it was James JI-TENGE. But later on, someone was allowed to use 3 names. And since the JI-TENGE family had, everybody was using JI-TENGE as the last name, I resisted naming myself James JI-TENGE Lando, and I called myself James Lando JI-TENGE. I stuck with the name James because it is in my birth certificate, it is in my primary certificate, it is in my O-level certificate, and it is in my A-level certificate and all other documentation. I'm sure 99% of the people who are listening to this would be shocked to hear that my real name is Raphael. Thank you.